everyone, welcome. I'm Neelam Raj, branch manager of our Maritime Travel New Westminster location. Thank you all for joining us today for this very special informative session of our next escorted group departure to the seventh continent, Antarctica, with South Georgia and the Falkland Islands for December of 2024. Joining me this afternoon are two very special guests. Kimberly Wood, Maritime Travel's Regional Director for Western Canada, and from one of our preferred Virtuoso partners, Quark Expeditions, is Kara Matthew, Regional Sales Manager for Canada. It is my honor and great privilege to have you both join me today. Our first guest speaker for this afternoon is Kimberly Wood. And now over to you, Kimberly.
Great, thank you, Neelam. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you as well for joining the call this afternoon. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and welcome you and thank you all for being here today. I also want to thank those on the call today that are clients of Maritime Travel today for your continued patronage. And those new to Maritime Travel, we look forward to welcoming you in the future. Just really quickly, Maritime has been around since 1949. We've become Canada's largest independent travel agency, and we really pride ourselves on the travel professionals in our offices like Neelam, who work incredibly hard. They're knowledgeable and service-oriented. There isn't a vacation or itinerary that we can't plan, and for you, our clients. Also at Maritime, we offer many benefits when you entrust your vacation travel planning with us. We don't have time, of course, to go through this today, but we would be happy to talk to you at any time and explain the value that we bring and the benefits of working with a travel professional. But I know everyone is very anxious to hear about this exceptional Antarctica adventure with Quark Expedition and the amazing itinerary that Neelam has partnered with our preferred supplier to bring you. So I'll turn the floor over to Kara Matthew without further ado. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you so much, Neelam, for having me. And as Neelam was mentioning, my name is Kara Matthew, and I've actually been with Quark Expeditions for almost 15 years now. I really do have a polar passion, and I got hooked on traveling to the polar regions when I actually went on my first expedition with Quark Expeditions back in 2010. And I'm here every step of the way with Neelam. Neelam and I and Maritime Travel work so closely together. So it's a privilege and an honor for doing this group and this event with Maritime Travel. So thank you again, Neelam. So Neelam is actually going to be your host for this amazing Epic Antarctica journey with us, as she mentioned, in December of 2024. And so please contact Neelam if you have any questions about the group at all. And she is here for you every step of the way and the journey. So Neelam and I have had the pleasure of spending a lot of time together, and we are here for you. So what I wanted to share with you and go over a little bit is why travel with Quark Expeditions? Why choose us to travel with to the polar regions, and particularly Antarctica? Well, Quark Expeditions is not a traditional cruise company. We don't dabble a little bit in the polar regions. We exclusively travel to the ends of the earth, to the Arctic and Antarctica. We don't go anywhere else in the world. We've been in business for over 31 years, and we are specialists in these regions. Again, we don't go anywhere else in the world. We are uncompromisingly polar. In fact, a big differentiator between us and a lot of the other operators is we've taken more people to the polar regions than any other operator because we exclusively do polar travel. Back in 1991, we were actually the first company to take travelers to the North Pole back in 1991. And we were actually the first company to circumnavigate Antarctica with travelers as well. So those are some of our firsts. But with Quark Expeditions, what sets us apart as well is we have small little expedition ships, all under 200 passengers. And we'll talk about the vessel that Neelam has chosen for this Antarctic expedition later on. But that is a sneak peek of our ultramarine. She is one of our small little vessels in our fleet, fit specifically for the polar regions. All of our ships are purpose-built, and this ultramarine vessel, our brand new ship in our fleet, is an excellent expedition ship that is beautiful and luxurious vessel that takes us to these really remote places of the world. So what's really important about choosing a small ship for an expedition, especially to the polar regions, is the fact the whole point about being on these little vessels is to be able to get off and explore these regions as much as possible. Now, that's not to say that if one afternoon you do want to stay on board and have a cocktail and have a spa and not go out on shore, of course you can enjoy the onboard amenities on board. But the whole point about being in these little small vessels is to maneuver where a lot of the larger ships can't. With expedition, a lot of the larger ships can't actually access because of guidelines and rules and regulations in these really remote locations. They actually have different rules of going into these areas. So with the smaller ships, as soon as you're picking a ship that's under 200 passengers, everyone's able to get off the ship at the same time with Quark expeditions. On ships that are over 200 passengers, like 250, 300, 500 passengers, not everyone can get off the ship at the same time. So again, we're not a traditional large cruise line where there's larger ships. As soon as you have a ship that's over 200 passengers in the polar regions, it really minimizes the opportunities for landings and shore excursions and off-ship experiences. With the larger ships, you have maybe groups A, B, C, and D. Maybe you're in group A and you're seeing whales or you're going on a landing, but maybe the weather turns. And maybe some of your other guests or your friends that are on board are in groups B, C, and D. And maybe group A has to come back on board and B, C, and D can't get off for various reasons of weather and wildlife, because we really are at the mercy of the wildlife and the weather in these regions, in these really remote regions. So it's nice to have everyone being able to get off the ship at the same time with a small expedition vessel. So I'll talk a little bit more about the details of the incredible ultramarine at the end of the presentation, but I actually just sailed on the ultramarine. I just came back from an incredible trip to Nunavut, exploring Baffin Island. And so this vessel is incredible, and I can't wait to share a bit more details with the ship that Neelam has chosen for you perfectly for the Antarctic expedition. But a big differentiator between Quark expeditions and a lot of the other operators going into these regions is that we have the most experienced team in the industry. We have an excellent educational program on board. We have historians, biologists, geologists, glaciologists. We even have a penguinologist that will be traveling with you on board to Antarctica. But the really important thing to remember is with our expedition team, it's one expedition team member to 5 guests. And in some instances, like on my trip, it's sometimes even 1 to 4. So what that really means is a more handled, personalized experience for you when you're traveling with us. Our expedition team will even sit with you during dinners and lunches and mingle with everyone on board and on deck, but also on shore. So depending on what you're interested in, we have certain specialists in those areas. What I love too is having an interest in polar history. I hadn't in the past, but our historian really brought polar explorers to life. So throughout the voyage, you'll experience great lectures, educational programs, and at the end of each full day, when you're out exploring, you're coming back to a fantastic recap of what was seen that day and various photos from that day from our photographer that's on board. And then also our expedition team leader will share with everyone what's in store for the following day. So it's a true expedition in the fact that it's not a traditional cruise where we have certain ports that we go into, certain schedules each and every day. There are mornings where we might say TBA on the schedule because our expedition leader with the ship captain might say, oh my gosh, there's a landing over here, but there might be a pod of whales that we'll see. So it just depends. Every day is so different and so unique. So we definitely pack our sense of adventure. And I'll get more into the ins and the outs of what the daily program looks like throughout an Antarctic expedition. But first, let's talk about the bottom of the world and some fun facts and what you can see and do when you're traveling with Quark expeditions to the end of the world. So let's chat a little bit about where Antarctica is, because I love maps, and I'm hoping that I can share some fun facts with you that you might not be aware of. But Antarctica is in the southern hemisphere, surrounded by the Southern Ocean. So it is the 5th largest continent on the planet. It's 14,000 square kilometers. So it's twice the size of Australia, just to give a bit perspective. And as you can see in this infographic, it's 98% covered in ice. So with Quark expeditions, we travel to the Antarctic Peninsula, as well as the subantarctic regions, South Georgia and Falkland Islands, which I'll also be talking about. So we have trips that go focus on the peninsula. Now this peninsula is the finger of land that reaches out to the southern tip of South America. Now a lot of operators travel in this finger of land, in the Antarctic Peninsula, as we call it, because it's the highest concentration of wildlife. There's over 20 million penguins in Antarctica, and a lot of the wildlife and penguins are in this region. So we travel to the Antarctic Peninsula, as well as these amazing subantarctic islands, Falkland Islands and South Georgia, which we'll be talking about with our time together. So Quark Expeditions travels to Antarctica at the end of October, all the way through to the end of March, the beginning of April. When we're going there, there's no bad time to go. It's just people see different things. And so I love the time that Neelam has picked, the end of December to the beginning of January, mid-January, because there's so much to see and do and variety. So the end of December, the actual chicks are hatching in Antarctica. But in December, you're also going to see the amazing king penguins, which I'll get into in South Georgia, a species that you cannot see on the Antarctic continent. So it's lots of things to see and do, just different things in different seasons. And we're actually going there in their summer. So the time that Neelam has picked, end of December, is coming into the full summer solstice in Antarctica. So it's the peak summer. So the average temperature is approximately +5 degrees Celsius to -5 degrees Celsius. And all of you are probably wondering why I'm wearing this amazing yellow parka. Well, it's a 3-in-1 parka, and it's a gift to you for traveling with Neelam and Quark Expeditions. So you will receive it on board when you travel with us. And it's perfect because it's varying temperatures. There are times, even beginning of January, where it could be +10 degrees Celsius with no wind, sun shining, and you might have to take your parka off and have the little liner while you're walking around on a landing. So we're going to Antarctica in the Antarctic summer. So it's not as cold as people think it is. Of course, there are days where it's a little bit windier than others, and you might need to bundle up with an extra sweater underneath for a Zodiac cruise. The Zodiacs are these little rubber boats that you're seeing here on the right-hand side of your screen that we use to maneuver onto the landing site or cruise around Zodiacs with the maneuvering around the icebergs. So again, it's not as cold as people think it is when we're traveling to Antarctica. The itinerary that we're focused on with Neelam hosting, which I'm thrilled about, is our Epic Antarctica itinerary, where you're not only be going to travel to the Falkland Islands and South Georgia, but you're exploring the Antarctic Peninsula and going right into the Antarctic Circle at 66 degrees south for a 23-day trip. So this is our most in-depth exploration of the region. So I always say, if people are thinking of going to Antarctica, why not think about taking the time and exploring the subantarctic regions, and also checklisting, not only stepping on Antarctica, but crossing the Antarctic Circle. So this is perfect for in-depth explorers who don't want to miss out on the incredible experiences that Antarctica offers. And I know Neelam well, and she is very much like me, and I don't want to miss out on anything. So that is one of the reasons why Neelam has also chosen this perfect itinerary to travel with her group. So let's start with the Antarctic Peninsula, even though this is the location that you'll explore last on the itinerary, because the itinerary starts with embarking in Ushuaia, but in the southern tip of Argentina. But you'll explore Falklands first, South Georgia, and then Antarctica, but I like starting with Antarctica first, if I may, because the Antarctic Peninsula is an environment of exquisite isolation. It's rich in wildlife and history, which I used to think was very boring, all the polar history. But again, as I mentioned, our historian brings everything to life. But your journey to the seventh continent, this trip takes you to the ends of the world, crossing right into the Antarctic Circle. In Antarctica, there's a silence in Antarctica that is truly deafening. It is like no other place on the planet. I love the wildlife, but I can't talk about the scenery enough either. The scenery is absolutely beautiful and pristine. It is absolutely gorgeous for mountain ranges, huge colossal glaciers and icebergs. But we're actually getting out and stepping onto the continent. So you will, if you travel with us, get out onto the continent and explore Antarctica. Quark Expeditions aims for a minimum of 2 excursions a day to get out. So it's typical if you've been on a river cruise. It's kind of like that in the sense that you'll have breakfast in the morning, we'll get out for an excursion, we'll come back and have lunch on board, we'll go out for another afternoon excursion, and then we'll come back, relax, and then have the daily briefing before a beautiful dinner. So we aim for a minimum of 2 excursions with multiple levels of hiking and contemplative walks available. So even if you're not a really active traveler, it's great if you're also just a leisure traveler that likes exploring and meandering. There's a little something for everything when you're traveling with Quark Expeditions. So we do hope to see a lot of wildlife. We don't guarantee penguins, but I can tell you there will be plenty of penguins in Antarctica. We're going to so many penguin rookeries. We'll typically see about 4 to 5 species of penguins. There's 17 species of penguins on the planet. But I wanted to also include this picture of this lazy seal here, because we will be able to see maybe crab-eater seals, Weddell seals, also leopard seals. So there was one excursion that I had where we had a full day in Antarctica. But then in the evening, when everyone was gathered in the lounge about 9 o'clock at night, I was sipping on my glass of wine when the marine biologist came on the speaker and said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who want to come for a 3rd excursion today, please grab your parkas and your boots, and I welcome you to get off the ship for another opportunity." Well, some people stayed in the lounge. I was traveling with my Aunt Lucy at the time, my 66-year-old aunt, which we had an amazing trip together. She decided to stay in the bar, but I decided with a lot of other guests to grab my parka and my boots. Well, we got the zodiacs in the water and we saw 40 crab-eater seals gathering krill at sunset in Antarctica. And it was something that the marine biologist hadn't seen in the 17 years that he'd been traveling with us and coming to Antarctica. So he was so excited to see this that the enthusiasm was infectious and a lot of guests wanted to join in. So that's an example of a true expedition spirit, something that wasn't planned, but something that happened, packing the sense of adventure and expecting the unexpected. Penguins are definitely the stars in the show. And I did mention penguins earlier, and they are so cute and so amazing and so wondrous. But I love just walking on shore, and every time we land on an excursion, we are briefed by the expedition leader and the expedition assistant leader. And they're sharing with guests how close to go to wildlife and how much distance, because we are respecting the environment and the areas in which we are in. We know that this is the penguins' territory, not ours, and there is respectful distance, but the penguins don't get the 15 feet distance that they are supposed to keep from guests. And they are so inquisitive and so excited. And I had a penguin come right in between my legs. I was standing shoulder width apart, looking at a beautiful glacier. And this penguin walked right in between my legs, looked up at me, and kept going. So just remarkable experiences with the wildlife in Antarctica as well. But don't forget, you might want to pack your nose plugs, something that might not be on the packing list. When we go actually into the rookeries and witness the rookeries, There is a commotion of a lot of sound, but also you can smell the penguin poo, the guano, we call it. So pack your your nose plugs if you are sensitive to smell. I grew up on the west coast of British Columbia. I go to the west coast often still. A couple of my sisters still live in British Columbia. And I grew up with whales, but there was nothing like seeing a humpback whale and her calf on one of my trips to Antarctica. Again, expecting the unexpected. On the actual program that morning, we were supposed to go on a landing site. In true expedition fashion, the humpback whales did not get the memo. There was a mother and her calf in this bay, and in true expeditionary fashion, we were in this cove and this bay area and watching this mother and her baby humpback, her calf, swimming around the zodiacs. And it was a moment I will never forget in Antarctica. And we were there for about 2 hours or so, and we didn't get on the landing site that morning because so many other things were happening. And again, that's an example of a true expedition where something might be planned, but we didn't expect that these humpback whales would show up. And the calf swam right underneath our Zodiac, and I could see the calf from the Zodiac, the safe rubber boat, and it was a remarkable experience in Antarctica. But there are 5 species of orcas that are in Antarctica that live there year-round in the subantarctic regions. And so you never know what you're going to expect. I saw a pod of 40 orcas, but on a trip that wasn't mine. So this picture was not taken on one of my trips, but this orca was actually tracking down a penguin. And the penguin was so scared that it jumped into the Zodiac with the guests. And I don't know who was more shocked, the penguin or the guests, but the penguin did not want to go back in the water. But of course, we're not interfering with wildlife or anything like that. And the penguin just sat there and waited it all out until the penguin felt it was safe enough to go back. And so you never know what you're going to get in the polar regions. But I do have a video that Neelam can share with you at some point of that fun experience that a lot of guests had in a particular Zodiac. So our Zodiacs typically fit 8 to 10 guests. Just because we like to keep it 8 to 10 for room, for opportunity for photographs. So when there is a great wildlife opportunity to take pictures or a beautiful scenery, we want everyone to be able to have ample opportunity to experience it, to take pictures. Now, I'm not a photographer. I take photographs with my camera phone, with the camera on my phone, sorry. But I know a lot of you are probably really great photographers, and there's at least one photographer on each of our trips. So photography is included if you want tips and tricks. We have a photographer that is actually part of the expedition team who travels with us as well. But I want to speak about the Falkland Islands in South Georgia because it is so different from the Antarctic continent. And so again, just to share with you the map of the itinerary, the Falkland Islands in South Georgia are the subantarctic region. So South Georgia is known, for instance, as being the Serengeti of the Southern Ocean. Or if you've been to Galapagos, the Galapagos of the subantarctic region. So these places are extraordinarily stunning. A lot of our guests travel to Antarctica with us and then come back to their travel advisor and say, I want to go back because I missed these subantarctic areas. And they hear so much about them on their trip. So definitely, this is one of the reasons why we've chosen the Epic Antarctica trip for Neelam to go on, and why she's so excited about this, because there's such diverse wildlife and glaciers and fjords and areas of this region that you can't see in Antarctica. So for instance, the Falkland Islands, the bottom left-hand corner here is called Gypsy Cove. Now, these aren't your ordinary beaches. You can tell that the scenery is different from Antarctica. There's a lot of lush greenery, more plant life, because we're not as south as going to the Antarctic continent. So beautiful scenery, great history. South Georgia is also home to Sir Ernest Shackleton's grave. And so this is a really incredible experience. Even if people haven't read some of his book, The Endurance, there is incredible history that you can learn on the way before visiting South Georgia for learning about Sir Ernest Shackleton. But if you're a birder, highly recommend the Falkland Islands. The Falkland Islands is home to the world's largest black-browed albatross colony. Now, the albatross has the largest wingspan of any living bird. This is an incredible bird. And we might be able to get a glimpse of it when we're sailing across the Drake Passage, the body of water between Antarctica and South America, because the albatrosses are soaring. They spend most of their life at sea. They only come to land to nest. So that is why we're seeing albatross colonies in the Falkland Islands. It's an incredible experience. And why I wanted to share this picture with you too is it not only is home to the largest black-browed albatross colony, but I wanted to share with you the fact that you can see the little macaroni penguins in there and other penguin species mixing with the albatross. So I thought that was a fantastic picture to share. I'm a huge wildlife enthusiast, and South Georgia is known for its colony of 250,000 breeding king penguins. You cannot see this anywhere else in the world. So Salisbury Plain Colony is South Georgia's second largest king penguin rookery that we actually travel into, and we walk into this area. We disembark the ship and we have a slow walk into this area. So again, we're not scaring any of the wildlife. So the king penguin is the second largest penguin species on the planet, and we cannot see this penguin species in Antarctica. But we're also seeing elephant seals and fur seals haul out on the nearby beaches to breed and giving birth and molting. So an example of the elephant seal is this is the elephant seal pup here on the top right. They are so cute and so sweet. And so we have opportunities to see them on shore, and again, staying a safe distance from them so we're not scaring the wildlife or interfering with them. And then on the left here, that is also a king penguin. So we saw the adults, the tall ones, but this is an adolescent king penguin. And naturalists actually thought that the king penguin, that this was actually completely different species of penguin. But then they realized with the molting feathers that it was actually the king penguin, the adolescent version. So the child of the king penguin. So the time that Neelam has chosen to go to South Georgia, you'll be able to see the adolescent king penguins, elephant seal pups, and elephant adult seals, and also other wildlife. So this is an example of the ultramarine in the background, guesting a safe distance from the king penguin colonies. And this is an example of the incredible wildlife experiences traveling to these regions. So that's not all. With Quark Expeditions, we offer the largest portfolio of off-ship adventure options in the industry. And because we only focus on polar, we have a lot included in the trip when you're traveling with Neelam on the Epic Antarctica departure. So there's various levels of walking and hiking in Antarctica. We also have the Zodiac cruising included. We have the polar plunge included. So think about, maybe even in the chat functionality, you can let me know if you think that you would do the polar plunge. Maybe Neelam will join you in that, maybe not, but it is included. I have just as much fun watching from the comfort of the vessel and cheering everyone on who does it. So that is included in each voyage as well. But with the ultramarine, which I'll share with you in a moment, we have 2 twin helicopters and 2 helipads on the ultramarine. So you at least get 1 15-minute helicopter flight sightseeing excursion included with your Epic Antarctica departure. It's included in the voyage. So in your cabin price, that is included. if you're a little bit more adventurous and you don't think that's enough adventure for you, we have exclusive paid adventure options that you can inquire with Neelam, that we have space on this departure that Neelam has chosen. So they're optional paid activities that can be booked advanced of the expedition. So when you're chatting with Neelam, please share with her the thoughts of you maybe doing an adventure option, because I highly recommend you putting it on hold with Neelam if you are thinking of holding some space on her group departure. So we have a traditional sea kayaking program. So if you are an avid sea kayaker, we have an excellent expedition guide that will travel with a small group of 12 to 16 sea kayakers. And this is happening at the same time potentially as Zodiac cruising or landings. And so if you are an avid sea kayaker, highly recommend reaching out to Neelam about that. We also have stand-up paddleboarding offered on your departure for an additional paid price. One of our stand-up paddleboarding guides, Artie, he's actually from Tofino on Vancouver Island, and he told me that around 70% of the paddlers, the stand-up paddlers that went with him, had never stand-up paddleboarded before, and they chose to do it in the calm waters of areas of Antarctica. So I have never stand-up paddleboarded before. It is not for me, but this is an incredible one-time experience. So if you do decide to go, it's typically about an hour and a half, and we supply all the equipment for the stand-up paddleboarding. Now, we also have paddling. It is an inflatable kayak, and this is also an additional paid adventure option to you. So this is an example on the left-hand side here of the inflatable kayak. So it is an hour to an hour and a half. So it's perfect if you have little to no kayaking experience, but you want to kind of test the waters and have this lovely experience in Antarctica. Again, it's a group of max of 10 with a guide. So we have a separate expedition guide that takes these paddlers out to explore some of the most beautiful places in the world with the paddling program. So know that it's 10 spots, a group of 10. So let Neelam know that it is available for purchase at the time of your booking. And so it is an excellent extra option for you. We have support Zodiacs on hand for these adventure options because we are in these really remote regions. And so there are questions like, well, why do I have to pay extra for these adventure options? And that is exactly why. We hire extra guides for these programs. We supply the wetsuits, we supply not only the personal flotation devices, but the wet sacks for your camera gear or your toque to go in. So we actually supply all of the equipment for you. And because on the Ultramarine we have 2 helicopters, we also on this Epic Antarctica departure that Neelam is hosting with Maritime Travel, we also have alpine heli landings. So you'll be a part of an intimate group of adventurers where we have exclusive small groups that have a heli landing opportunity as well. So you can reach areas of the Antarctic that can only be safely accessed by helicopter. So it's a small group of fellow passengers and expert guides. And again, it's an additional paid adventure option where you can have an opportunity to soar off, not only see the scenery, but you can also make a landing. So this is an additional paid adventure option, whereas heli flight sightseeing is included. So this is an additional adventure option that I wanted to mention is available to you on Neelam's departure. But let's talk about the ship that will take you there. With 3 decades of polar exploration, Quark Expedition has an incredible ship that we built, purpose-built for the polar regions, called the Ultramarine. It means beyond the sea in Latin. So when you're traveling to the edge of the world, we know that people not only want safety, but they also want comfort and luxury. So this is an incredible vessel that we have, again, only for the polar regions. We only do polar travel. So we have this little ship under 200 passengers. She does the Arctic and Antarctica with us and is excellent for the polar regions. But what I loved about her, and that I really noticed when I traveled with us, and I just got off this last week, we have an internal Zodiac hangar that quickly and safely deploys Zodiacs into the water. So this means that you'll get off the ship even faster, which I love. So this allows for more spontaneous off-ship adventures and more intimate wildlife engagement and scenery with the icebergs, because this unique design allows you to get off the ship in half the time of other vessels. And there's a transom, a marina deck, so that you can get right in and out of the Zodiacs. And it's kind of like getting in and out of this bathtub. So that's kind of an example. I was with all ages on my trip. I was with 87-year-olds, 82-year-olds on my trip. And I was in Antarctica. We've even traveled with a 99-year-old who loved getting in and out of the Zodiacs. Every guest has the safety grip to get in and out of the Zodiacs, whether it's on shore or in and off the ship. And all of our crew are there to help. And so this is an incredible way to travel with Quark Expeditions. And also, it's our expedition team that are driving the Zodiacs. It is not our ship crew. Our ship crew to guest ratio is 1-to-1. Our expedition team crew to guest ratio is what I was saying, 1-to-5 approximately. So again, an intimate experience. Our expedition team are absolutely incredible and so knowledgeable in these areas. What I love too about the Ultramarine is the ready room. So there is no need for me to leave my parka and my boots in my cabin. You can leave them in your locker. So before going into the Zodiacs or going kayaking, I love being able to see guests use the ready room. Now I kept the shell of my parka with me, this great liner, so I could run out on deck or go on my balcony with those chillier days, and kept the shell of the parka, this waterproof shell, in the hangar in these ready rooms with my boots. So we not only give you a parka to keep, these great yellow parkas that I love, but we also provide guests with boots. So one less thing for you to pack. So they're on loan for the duration of the voyage. They're awesome muck boots. So they're Canadian boot, muck boot, and they've got great tread on the bottom of them. So I stored the muck boots just like this, how you can see the boots. I stored my muck boots there and then stuck my runners or my dock shoes right there, so that my dock shoes were there when I got back and I could take off my muck boots and then have my runners there waiting for me when I came back on board. So we have 2 twin helicopters operated from 2 helipads. So this allows guests to simultaneously experience new destinations possible only by air, and to enjoy a really unique aerial perspective of Antarctica. So we have heli operations in Antarctica. And I just wanted to be very clear that in South Georgia and Falkland Islands, we do not use helicopters. They are prohibited because of wildlife. But in Antarctica, the whole point of the helicopters is to get gorgeous aerial views of mountain ranges, glaciers. So I love seeing the glaciers from sea level in the Zodiacs. And then after getting in the helicopter and getting that aerial perspective that I couldn't see from sea, the beautiful colossal glaciers, and seeing the length and the enormity of the glaciers, or a huge iceberg that you couldn't really gain perspective of until we got into the helicopters. I mentioned the onboard educational programs, and this is a real highlight for a lot of our guests that I think you would find a huge highlight as well. It's not only where we're traveling to, I believe, but it's who we're traveling with that truly makes an experience. And I loved gathering, and this is our ambassador lounge, grabbing a cocktail at the end of the day, hearing the daily recaps, or going and hearing educational programs on birds. So our ornithologists are fantastic. Our geologists, our glaciologists. I learned so much about whales from our marine biologist. So the onboard experience is incredible. And there's exceptional dining. Beer and wine is included with meals. Coke, pop, soda water, orange juice, juices. They're available around the clock, included with your price when you're traveling with us. And also, what I love about our cuisine is I loved at dinner choosing from a lot of different options. We have vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, dairy-free. So many dietary requirements can also be had. But during breakfast was buffet. But what I loved is sitting at breakfast and still getting a la carte. Eggs Benedict. I got 2 poached eggs in the morning. So even though there's a buffet and breakfast, you're more than welcome to ask your server to bring you poached eggs or whatever you'd like a la carte. Absolutely. So I never went hungry, and the cuisine was incredible. One dinner I had chef's souffle, and chef came around all the time and asked all the guests how their meal was. I loved the souffle, and I am not a cook, but chef realized that I loved the souffle. When I got back to my cabin later on that evening after being in the bar, I had the recipe for his souffle under my cabin door waiting for me when I got there. So I thought that was an extra added touch being on board. So I'll let you know how that souffle turns out maybe in the fall when I can try it. But there's an excellent spa on board. When you're traveling with Neelam, there's a $250 per person onboard credit, so you can use it in the spa, the gorgeous Tundra Spa. You can also go in the gym. There's a great gym. We have 2 saunas, a steam sauna, as well as beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows in our dry sauna. But we always encourage everyone to get out on deck. We have a great wraparound deck on deck 5. I love doing laps and walking around because there's different perspectives. But then we also have a panorama deck with a panorama lounge, great for getting out on just on the bow and seeing a great viewing platform too for looking out for wildlife. So I know we have a lot of questions too. So I just wanted to mention a few cabins. So we have all outside cabins. We have cabins like our Explorer Suite that have no balconies, which is our introductory cabin. But then we have beautiful spacious suites. So this is an example of our deluxe balcony suites. So our suites are incredible. So please reach out to Neelam if you have any questions about the cabin categories. But the bathrooms are incredible. So this bathroom on the top right was my cabin, my deluxe, a deluxe balcony suite. So there's a bathtub, gorgeous sink. There's even heated floorings in the bathrooms on the Ultramarine, which was just divine. It was so lovely coming back with my bare feet from the spa or after that polar plunge, coming back to heated flooring. It was so remarkable. So again, thank you so much for your time. The itinerary that Neelam is hosting a group with Maritime Travel on is the Epic Antarctica departure, December 16th of 2024 to January 7th, 2025. And this is truly an epic expedition. It is what I call too the whole kit and caboodle, traveling down to the bottom of the world. This is an excellent itinerary for you. And Neelam will definitely be with you every step of the way leading up to the departure. We do have a packaging, a transfer package. So even though you'll see Buenos Aires to Ushuaia here, everyone actually embarks the ship in Ushuaia, Argentina, the southern tip of Argentina. So just I thought if that was a question for you, that you will embark the ship, not in Buenos Aires, you do embark the ship on this itinerary in Ushuaia, Argentina, and you'll disembark the morning of day 23 on this itinerary. So thank you so much. There is so much to talk about, and I really appreciate all of you hanging in there because I could talk about Antarctica alone in the peninsula for a full hour, and there's just so much to share. So please let me know if you have any questions at all. And I am here helping Neelam every step of the way with this extraordinary, epic trip of a lifetime.
Thank you, Kara. That was absolutely fabulous. I also just wanted to let everyone know that I'm currently working on a pre-Brazil and Argentina package. So we will be flying into Rio. We'll spend a few nights in Rio, then off to Iguazu Falls, and then on to Buenos Aires, where we'll join the tour with you. And I just wanted to update everyone regarding different cabin categories. Sorry, Kara, I just really didn't want to interrupt you. We had one owner suite, which is now sold out. So just wanted to update you on that.
Wow,
Yes. So, and I
that's
do.
incredible.
Yes, so I do see a few questions which has come in, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to send it in through the chat feature, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. So, Kara, the first question which has come in was, can someone with mobility issues travel with you? How easy or challenging will it be for them to get on and off the Zodiac? And will there be doctors on board the ship?
Ah, those are some of my favorite questions. Let's start with the doctors, because I had the privilege of just traveling with our ship doctors and our expedition doctors. So with doctors, we have one ship doctor and a nurse on board. And then we have also an expedition team doctor who is very well versed in expedition travel and comes on every landing and excursion with all of our guests. And what I love is our doctors are also included in the package of your price for your cabin. So when you're traveling with us, for instance, there was one day on my previous trip when I just got back, I was a little like seasick, just from a little seasickness. I love ships and I love cruising. And I went to see the doctor and I got a little seasickness medication to take, and I was fine and I could get to dinner. But that's included. So whenever you're seeing a doctor visit on board with us, it's all included, whether it's something as minor as seasickness medication or to something as a little bit major, where I had someone have a little bump on their head because they were being a little risky on a particular landing, and they had needed a couple little stitches on their head, and that was also included. So depending on the severity, we have it all included. And there's also $500,000 of medical evacuation insurance included in each person's cabin. And then with the question about activity levels and fitness levels, I think that's a really great point, because I think a lot of people hear Quark expeditions and they think expeditions, it's too out of the box, it might not be for them. Our average age is 55. Again, I traveled with 99-year-olds, I traveled with 86-year-olds. Some of them didn't want to get off the ship at all and enjoy being in creature comforts. A lot of them still wanted to get off the ship. It just depends on the each guest. So what I like to say is the person that really would enjoy and get the most out of these types of trips is maybe someone who, if you walk your dog once a day for about a half an hour, 40 minutes of just a leisurely walk, that's a perfect example of the fitness level. However, I had a woman who loved walking with poles. They stabilized her on each landing because we supply walking poles on each landing for every guest. And so there are people who can walk around and are comfortable, or just want to sit on a rock and see the penguins come in and out of shore. And that's completely fine too.
Thank you, Kara. Next question, which has just come in, is why Cork and not an ocean liner such as Holland America, Azamara, Silver Seas?
Yeah, great question. One of my favorites, because they're all excellent companies. I've traveled with some of those myself. And what I love about Quark Expeditions, and why I've been with the company for so long, and us being in business for over 31 years, is we're specialists in polar. We're exclusively polar. This is the only area we go, so we are specialists in these regions. And the smaller ships are really important to be traveling on if you want the experience of getting off the ship as much as possible, maneuvering into areas that some of the larger ships can't. And those are some of the really big differentiators of going with us. We try and get off the ship as much as possible. And with the ultramarine, we can get off faster and get everyone off at the same time, so we're not leaving any guest on board if they don't want to be there.
Thank you, Kara. And that also you are almost all inclusive, whereas with other ocean liners, you would have to, pay for your excursions.
Yeah, you don't have to pay to get off on Antarctica. I know an advisor had reached out to me and someone wanted to step foot in Antarctica with, I think it was Princess, but they had to pay. It was an added excursion to pay thousands of dollars to actually step foot. And I'm using that as a loose example of an experience that some people have brought to me. And so with the voyage, landings are included, Zodiac cruising is included, access to our expert expedition team that have been in these regions. And this is exclusively what they do. Hand-holding each of you every step of the way is remarkable. They're not going back to their cabins and they're the superstars, which I feel, but they're chatting with all of you and sitting with guests at dinners and lunches, which I love, so that they can tell their own stories of their own travels and being in the polar regions.
Great, thank you, Kara. Now I have a question for you. So people have this preconceived notion that Antarctica is very cold.
Yeah.
And I know you have been there many times. What can you say about that?
You're right about the preconceived notion of it being really cold in Antarctica. And I think as soon as people think of Antarctica, they think of March of the Penguins, all the penguins huddled together, the wind blowing, and that is their winter. So with us going to Antarctica in their summer, in their early spring and late fall, it's one of those things that it's not as cold as people think it is. And I'm based now in Toronto, but it was minus 27 degrees Celsius this past winter in Toronto. It was way warmer in Antarctica. It was a balmy 8 degrees Celsius when I was speaking to some of our team members on board. It was way warmer in Antarctica than it was in January and February here in Toronto. So the average temperature probably in the end of January, beginning of December ranges from about -5 to +5. Yes, it's great to have a parka. There are days where the wind does pick up, where you're Zodiac cruising, and I put an extra sweater on underneath for Zodiac cruising. But when I knew when I was going out for a walk, I loved being able to get out on my balcony, test the temperature, and dress accordingly, because sometimes we know if we're walking around, we can get a little bit warm. So I didn't need to tie my parka around my waist, because this parka comes with handles and it's a backpack. So when you get warm on an Antarctic landing or in South Georgia, you can just put the parka as a backpack and you don't have to carry it or tie it around your waist, because there are times where you might get a little warm walking around on a landing.
That's neat. Thank you. One last question I have. I know you were just on this beautiful ultramarine ship, and I have heard a lot about the heated floors.
Yes.
Can you share your experience with us?
So I was hearing rumblings at breakfast this one morning about some guests saying, "Oh my gosh, have you tried the heated floors?" So in every bathroom, there's spa-inspired bathrooms in every suite on the ultramarine. And there's a little temperature gauge right beside the light switch of going into the bathrooms. And the temperature gauge is not for the cabin. Now there is a separate thermostat for your cabin, and everyone can have their own heat and how they want it in their cabin and adjust that. But this little dial was for the heat on the floors of the bathroom. So you can put it as warm or as hot as you'd like. And having my bare feet on this warm tile, getting in and out of the bathtub or in and out of the shower, or coming back from a landing that was a little bit chillier, even on my socks. It was such an incredible feature, and that's an example of some of the luxurious features on the ultramarine.
Great, thank you. Do we have any more questions, Kara? Not that I can.
No, I think those were excellent, all excellent questions. Again, I saw a question is, are the boots included? Yes, the boots are included for the duration of the voyage. They're on loan. One less thing to pack, one less thing to carry or go out and buy. That's a great added feature as well. And as Neelam you were saying, you know, there's options for trips prior to this. It's great to not have one more thing to lug around.
Yes. Yeah, and I'll have more information on my pre-package to Brazil and Argentina coming out shortly in a couple of weeks. So yeah. All right, so if we don't have any further questions, I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Please do not hesitate to reach out for any questions or to reserve your cabin today.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Neelam and Kimberly, for having me. And all of you, I can't wait to hopefully see you on board with Neelam.
Thank you. Thanks, Kara. Thanks, Kimberly.
Thanks, Neelam. Thanks, Kara. Excellent job. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.